Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out this evening. My name's Anessa. I'm an adult services librarian here at the Ames Public Library, and I'm pleased to welcome you to our presentation this evening. If you want more information about tonight's topic of internet safety, I would encourage you to check out the books that we have on the table just outside the door. We have a lot of up-to-date books on this topic, and we're always happy to help you find information. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce John from the League of Women Voters, who's going to introduce this evening's speaker.
Thank you, Anessa. Well, what a pleasant surprise to see a good crowd come out on a cold and windy day. There are some seats up here, folks. From my point of view, I can see 1, 2, 3 seats. So come on up. Okay, very good. Well, tonight's program, presented by the League of Women Voters, is on the subject of cybersecurity. And I'm not going to ask people to raise their hands if you've had an issue with cybersecurity. My suspicion is you all have at some point. I know Carolyn and I have. Every so often we get a call from the bank saying, did you buy this? And we say no. And then we have every so often getting a new credit card, which is a pain. The first incident we had with that was we got a call saying, have you been to the Netherlands recently? And while you were in the Netherlands, did you buy a telescope? No. And no. So how does that happen? I don't know. But our speaker tonight will probably tell us how that happens and many other things that we will be will be very helpful information. I know some people have had some really terrible stories about things that have happened because of breaches of security on their computer. So without saying anything more, I'm going to introduce Doug, who is the professor of computer engineering and electrical engineering at Iowa State. Doug Jacobson. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for showing up. I have a bunch of slides and we'll go through them. I want to leave plenty of time for questions. If anybody has a question anywhere during the talk, please feel free to interrupt me. I don't stay on script very well, so I chase squirrels all over the place. I want to start out by sort of setting the landscape, sort of past, present, and kind of where things are at. We'll start with the birth of the internet. The internet was created on October 29th, 1969. I think it was like at 10 o'clock at night in California. There were only 4 computers on the internet day one. The people all knew each other. This thing was built without worrying about anything like security because the 4 universities knew each other, right? So you didn't have to worry about anything. And they were just amazed it worked. And actually it didn't technically work. They were trying to log in and they typed the letter L. And then on the other end of the phone, yeah, we got the L, they typed the letter O, we got the O, and it crashed. So the internet sent 2 characters and crashed on its inaugural voyage. I shouldn't have connected to the internet. Okay. And then part of why I'm putting this up here is, I'm not going to get into all the technical details, but there's lots of, you hear about firewalls and intrusion detection and all this technology that's out there. And this is old stuff. We're still doing the same thing we did back in the 70s and 80s. And it's not working. So part of what we want to do, part of what we're going to talk about is the things we can do because technology alone isn't going to solve this problem. Another cool thing, 1988 was the first large-scale attack on the internet. November 2nd, 1988. November 2nd is my birthday, but I was born before 1988. But I remember that day on my computer, one of our servers that I managed got this thing. So I was victim of the first internet worm that took down 2/3 of the internet. So it's sort of kind of a little bit why I'm doing what I'm doing. Today, right, everybody hears news. Everybody hears all these things going on the internet. part of the, the big change. I've been in cybersecurity since the early 90s, back before this was really an area to be in. And I used to give, I give these various talks all the time. It was always difficult to explain to people why we had hackers, why there were these bad people, what did they get out of it. That has changed. That has changed drastically. FBI report says, reported losses of $12.5 billion last year in 2023. That's reported. Most people, if you talk to in the industry, say that's probably about half of what really is out there. So you're talking about a $25 billion industry, US only. So estimates of this as being an extremely large business worldwide. This is a new form of organized crime. So it's where the money is. Most of the attacks come by going after people. So it's not this thing the TV shows you of some dude in the basement with his mother upstairs yelling at him, typing away madly at a keyboard, breaking into a computer. That happens, but a lot of it is going after the individuals, whether they're individuals at home or whether they're individuals inside of a company or an organization. And so I'm going to go through this real quick. This is just kind of boring data, but it kind of shows you that it's not getting better. So this is that FBI report. So you see it's been a steady increase over the last 5 years. A little bit about what they do. And we hear all this stuff on the news about ransomware, right? And ransomware is a problem, but it's not even in the top 10. It's clear over there. The top 2 are basically taking money directly from people. Investment scams, typically around Bitcoin, business email compromises, using email to get money from people. So if you can convince somebody to send you the money, why would you do anything else, right? I mean, that's easy. You don't need to break into a computer if you can convince somebody to move money. How many have heard, it was in the news just recently, the lawsuit was in the news, the event happened a while back, but the Field of Dreams had $500,000 that was given to them through the feds. And the way the money typically flows through the feds is it has to show up in the counties, and then the money's transferred that way. Somebody convinced somebody at the county that to change the bank account number, and $500,000 moved to somewhere, not the Field of Dreams. So it's easy to just, right? You pick up the phone, you send a note and say, hey, I'm with Field of Dreams, and everybody can find out who the director of that is. You can easily find out all the information to convince somebody that I've changed the bank account. Now send the money here. Piece of cake. Easy work, right? Probably took them 2-3 minutes. That's a pretty good hourly rate. Some more data. They go after, they tend to go after people more of my age and older. In part, that's where the money is, right? Again, but they go after all age groups, and they use various different methods to get money. So that's the biggest thing that's changed. They get money. This is a profitable business, as I said. Some more trends. Again, it's not getting better. They're getting better doing what they're doing. So what I want to do is set the stage, and I didn't set the stage to scare you, is now we want to talk about what they do, what some of the threats are, and the things that that you can do to help mitigate some of this. And there's lots of threats out there. And we're gonna kind of talk about the common things that we run across. And this is a widely accepted list. You can go to several government places, and you'll see lists very similar to this of these types of things. Biggest one, social engineering, right? That's convincing somebody to do something. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Phishing, obviously, is an email scam. You hear a lot about malware and viruses. That actually is not as big a deal as, again, the press and others make it out to be. And typically that is delivered using social engineering. So we'll talk about that, but again, it's convincing you to run the virus as opposed to somehow getting the virus into your computer through technical means. Talk a little bit about data breaches and identity theft. That's unfortunately a threat that you have no control over, right? Your credit card company loses your identity or loses your information, or somebody else loses your information. It's not your fault. But there are things we're going to talk about that you can do to help mitigate even pre-event. And we'll talk a little bit about Wi-Fi, and then we'll talk some about some general mitigations that we see across the various threats. So social engineering, it's the people, and they're very good at this. Email is probably the most favorite methods, because email costs almost nothing to do, and you can craft or create emails, and you're not interacting with a person. So it's really how deceptive can you be with your email. And I'm going to talk a little bit about AI in a few minutes and what effect that has in all of this. Attachments, kind of interesting. We don't see a lot of viruses coming in as an email attachment, because that's the place our technology is doing a real good job of fixing. What we see now are attachments that themselves aren't malicious. It's not a bad program. The attachment is something like an invoice, right? We have charged your account $999.45, I think is the typical number, for an iPhone. And you get that, and it says, if you have any questions or so on, here's the link you go. So they're trying to convince you, scare you, thinking they've charged you for an iPhone, and you're going to go in and contact them, and they're going to want something like your bank information to reverse the charge. So the payload is not malicious, but it's an invoice for an iPhone, right? So none of the software says this is bad. So they're very good at doing these types of things. They want to take you to websites, of course, to enter information. But one of the things I have seen that has been an interesting change is their willingness to engage in a long-term discussion with their victim. The Nigerian lottery, right? We've all won the Nigerian lottery at least once in our lives. That was, was a blanket, tens of millions of emails, and hopefully somebody bites on it. Now they're willing to send you a text. They're willing to send you a simple email of, hello, you got a minute? Can I help? Is there something, can you help me with something? So you'll get texts of just simple, from numbers you don't know, of hello, hi, how are you? We haven't connected in a while. And they're doing that to start a dialogue, to start a conversation. And then depending on what, there's different things they want to do with that conversation. They may be grooming to try to get money. They may try to get some personal information, etc. But they're willing to interact. They're willing to pick up the phone and call you, right? Hey, I'm from Microsoft, and we've detected a problem with your computer, and I'm here to help. I'm not going to go into the long story, but I played with one of those people one night for about 20 minutes or so. And it was fun because I screen captured everything he had me do. I played really dumb, and then when it was all said and done, I thanked him. I didn't let him get his, at some point I knew the next step was going to compromise my computer, so that's when I stopped. And then I thanked him for this. I told him I teach cybersecurity. I have all these great screenshots. This is something I know. Oh, did that make him upset? So, I don't encourage you to play with these people, but sometimes it's fun to play with these people. And so, again, their willingness to interact now with the victim. There's a lot of scams around. There's a piano scam that floated around Iowa State a few times. Hey, I have a piano. I'm going to give it away. Again, they're trying to collect information. So they're again wanting to interact, and again, their goals are different. Usually it leads to money, but it may be information, identities, logins, etc. So a little bit about AI in this. So AI is a fun, cool tool. I use AI all the time, and actually at the end of this presentation, I'm going to point you to some resources that were basically 100% AI created. But what AI enables our adversary to do, especially in the area of phishing types of attacks, right? There's no more bad grammar. There is well-written materials, right? And I can customize the content. I can start to pull down a portfolio. If I'm after an organization, I can go grab all their public information on this organization. I can feed it into an AI program and say, write me a letter for invoicing this organization for $500,000 worth of XYZ. And I want it to come from the president. And it will do a beautiful job of it. It is amazing what AI can create. Voice cloning, we're there. It takes about 7 seconds of voice, and I can clone anybody's voice with AI. And it's getting better and better. You ought to hear some AI-generated songs, man. It can sing. Boy, it can sing. Video cloning is getting there. We're a ways away, but video cloning is getting there. There's a faculty member down at the University of Iowa that I interact with who was at a conference, and he showed an image of himself giving a lecture that wasn't him. And on the screen, if he wasn't standing next to it, I'd have bought the fact it was him. So again, they're able to do some really clever things. Interesting though, when you talk to the feds and others, we've not seen a increase in the number of these phishing attacks. We've seen just an increase in their quality. So it's not brought more people to the table, it's just improved the quality of the people that are already at the table. There was kind of a speculation we'd see an increase in the number of attacks, and we really haven't. They've just gotten better at it. I've kind of talked about this already. I mean, it does a great job of analyzing data and extracting something out of it. So we're seeing this again, especially towards businesses, of being able to extract information about partners, who's in charge of what parts of the business, and so AI can gather all that information and say, I work for this company, and I need to write a letter to the president to talk about X, Y, and Z, to ask for this. Can you draft that letter for me? And here's all the information about the president, etc. And it will, first pass, it'll come up with something that's probably better than many of us could write. And so that's kind of the scary piece. And they tend to, like I said, the customized stuff tends to be towards businesses. They're not going to bother to create and go out and research any of us for days and days to create something that customized for any of us. So they're after the $500,000 from the Field of Dreams sort of payoffs. But it does help them make the individual emails a lot more readable. So let's talk a bit about mitigation. This is somewhat of a hard one, which is why it's still a problem. technology helps. So we have better scanners. Our computers themselves are better at not letting bad things happen to them. And so we're doing a better job of this, but they're doing a better job of trying to convince us to do something else. So it really comes about to user education. The process piece also plays a little more to business, but it also really is a thought process that everybody needs to have. In thinking about how you interact, I think I heard some people comment, there was a comment about banks and things like that. Understanding how these businesses operate. For example, no legitimate business will ever ask you for anything they already know about you. The bank will never ask you for your account number. They'll never call you up and ask for your social security number. They'll never ask you for your username and password. Nobody will do that because nobody should know it but you. And so those sort of requests will not come from anybody legitimate. And when in doubt, somebody calls you like that, say, I'm going to have to call you back. And then you can call your bank itself. They call and say something bad's happened and you don't think it seems right, hang up on them. Tell them you're calling back. The banks aren't going to be mad at you when you do that. Because A, the banks didn't do it in the first place. And they're going to want to know if somebody's trying to do something like that, pretending to be your bank. So understanding sort of what the normal business process is helps you be more aware or more able to know what's not right. So it's actually easier to focus, if we can, on knowing the right things, and then everything else you're suspicious of. As opposed to me sitting here trying to explain them the 1,000 bad things they do, let's focus on this is the way it normally works. The banks work like this, all your providers, everybody with your hospitals are going to call you up and ask for your information about your last medical exam and your social security number. They have all that. They have your Medicare information. They have all that. They'll never call you and ask you for that. So helping kind of create those internal what's right, what's normal. But that's hard in some sense, because what I'm trying to explain is that sometimes you got to be skeptical, and we're by our nature, most people aren't skeptical, and so it's a little difficult to try to sit there and say, well, be leery of everybody, and that's not what I'm trying to say. But again, understand what normal looks like. Malware, this is this thing, used to be a big deal, and it still is. It's where we tend to see malware again more now is in the industrial control, corporations, etc. Pretty good about, like I said, email. It doesn't work very well. What we tend to do, and probably the most common way to get email or get malware is to convince you to install it versus tricking you into installing it. So instead of sending an email attachment with a virus and hoping that it can get past the 3 email filters that your ISP runs, and then the email filter that you have on your computer, and then the operating system, etc. It's much easier for me to call you up and convince you that I'm from Microsoft and your computer has a virus and I want you to install this piece of software, which is exactly the person I talked to was doing. It was, back to that guy again. It was brilliant what he had me walk through. It was like, this is going to get anybody who doesn't know what's going on. He managed to easily convince, by bringing up some log files, that my computer was infected. And then he took me to a legitimate website to download software that allows people to take over your computer, something like TeamViewer, which is a legitimate piece of software. It's often used in corporations to remotely manage, or I know people that use it to help, you know, a kid will use it to help their parents and manage their computer remotely. And so it's a very legitimate piece of software. They take you to a legitimate site, ask you to download that software, hoping you don't really know what it does. And that gives this person full and complete access to your computer. So it's much easier just to get on the phone and convince somebody to do the work for you. And so we still see this, but it's often driven by this social engineering. Most ransomware shows up on an organization because they convince somebody somewhere to download a piece of software and run it. It's not because some person managed to sneak something in. Oh, you know, that does happen some, but yeah.
If Best Buy, I mean, if somebody from Best Buy says for you to download some software so that they can interact with you, are they legitimate?
If you got a hold of Best Buy and talked to them, so it depends on how, you know. So you can, I don't know much about Best Buy, but I know that some of the help desk, you know, some of the people that offer computer support will set that up for you. It's set up legitimately. It is something you have to authorize to ever have happen. And so the software itself has a very legitimate reason. And so if you've entered a relationship with Best Buy or Norton or some of these other organizations and allow them to have that access, then that's legitimate. And they can't blindly initiate it. They can't just sit there and wake up one night and go, oh, it's your turn. I'm going to go after your computer today. They have to interact with you, exchange that code in order to turn that software on. So yeah, if you've initiated the relationship, then yeah, it's a perfectly valid way. I mean, Iowa State that's run on a lot of our computers at Iowa State, this ability to go in and remotely manage computers in staff offices, et cetera, because it's easier than wandering around trying to show up in somebody's office. You can fix it from your office. So yeah, I didn't want to make it sound like that software itself's bad, but it's like any tool. You know, this person would have walked me through downloading it, walked me through telling him the magic code that showed up, and then gained access. But the thing was, we didn't have a relationship before it started. He contacted me, telling me that my computer was bad.
And once that conversation is over with Best Buy, then they don't have your information anymore. They can't come back, and you know, some new employee or whatever.
They can't come back in. If the software's even still there, they can't come back in until they get a hold of you and get that permission to come back in. Okay. So the software is sitting there, in essence, dormant until, typically it's because you've contacted them and I got a problem, can you help? And then that's when you give them the code that it's a one-time code that says, okay, the person that wants into my computer, I want them to in, and here's the magic number that they can use to get in. Kind of already talked a little bit about this. We'll do backups a little bit later. One of the things though is listen. It kind of sounds funny, but listen to your computer. When a computer pops up a message and says, "Do you really want to do this?" That is its way of telling you you don't want to do this. But they don't want to say it that way because they might, but it's really asking you to think about what you're about to do. And in some cases, it is perfectly fine. You always see that when you get a Word document that you get from somebody you really know, and it comes up and says, "Do you really want to open it?" And it's like, well, yeah, I know them, and I expected this Word document. But when it's trying to run a piece of software and it pops up and says, do you really want to run this? That you just got in an email? Like, no, you probably don't want to do that. So again, when it pops up a message, because the first inclination is, oh, geez. Okay, yes, you're right. You click yes as many times as you can to get out of the message. Just like you click yes on the 35-page disclaimer that they all send you. And so again, listen to your computer. I've already talked about the information, and I said we'll circle back onto backups in a little bit. Oh, yeah, sorry.
My experience is the most frequent time that you get those pop-ups is accessing a website.
Yes. Yeah.
When it usually says something like, I forget what the term is, the security certificate is expired or something like that.
Yeah, and if it, so you will, so that's an interesting thing. So several things happen on websites that are, some are malicious and some are not. Some websites will pop up another window. Those you got to be a little more leery of. That's not a real normal behavior. And so you really got to think about them a little bit. Sometimes you'll go to a website and it flat out says the certificate's bad. Sometimes that's because the owner of the website didn't update their certificate. Others, that's an indication that you got directed to some place that you shouldn't be. So anytime you get that message, that is one you really want to think about. Is that truly legitimate? And usually you want to back out of that because it's a mismatch. So when you get the little padlock at the top of your browser, what that padlock says is that the domain, the machine name you type, the website you went to, IBM, usbank.com, that you typed in usbank.com, and it shows up there as usbank.com, and the little padlock says, yes, that where you are now at belongs to that name, usbank.com. So that means you went to the place legitimately called usbank.com. Not having the padlock doesn't, then you don't have that relationship, and the certificate is what proves that padlock. So if there's a bogus certificate or a bad certificate, it's your browser telling you the name here doesn't match with the certificate, or there isn't a certificate and there should be one, and therefore you shouldn't go to those. So that often happens, like I said, when they drive you someplace. Now occasionally you'll go to a site where they didn't pay the money to renew the certificate, and then you got this little bit of a dilemma of, is it legitimate? So this is the one that we have no direct control over. This is when and name your favorite company you've done business with loses 35 million records, or however many million that whoever loses. Right, some of the more recent ones around here, there was a Wolf Eye Clinic a few years ago, I think, was one. Des Moines Orthopedic was another one that lost your records. It's not your fault. Oh, gee. Yeah. Thank you. And so it's not your fault. Those records, they are the caretakers of them. We can get into discussions of should they have had the records. Now again, you're dealing with a medical organization. They have to have information about you. The bank has to have information about you. And so it's hard to mitigate this because it's their fault. When this happens, they should tell you. They don't do a very good job of that always. Orthopedic, I think, was 6 months or something like that before they told the people. And it's like, okay, by that time, anybody who wanted to use the stuff has already used your stuff. So some companies do a better job of doing this than others. The more regulated it is, the quicker they are to act. But they should provide you, yeah.
What really bugs me about this situation is when you get this notification that we've been breached and they're like, oh, we didn't mean it and blah, blah. And then basically they screwed up, but the message is, you're responsible for your own safety. And it's like, oh, thanks. And it happens all the time.
Yes, and you're right. They screwed up and you're paying for it. That's the buyout.
On that same note, so they say, you say you have to have these, they have to have information about you. And so, well, I used to work for the post office and they got hacked. And so they provided several years of credit monitoring, and then the credit people, like Experian, they say, well, you should set up an online account with Social Security so no one else can do it. But I'm already on Social Security, and if I just set that up, well, that's just one more company that can be hacked. So what's your thought on that? I just put freezes on all my credits with all 3 companies.
Right.
But do you think I should go and set something up with Social Security when it's working and, if it ain't broke, don't fix it?
Yeah, there was, and Social Security has done a much better job of fixing the problem. There was a problem for a while where if I knew enough about you, I could create an account. I could create an account pretending to be you in Social Security. So
Actually, an exactly parallel situation actually did happen with IPERS a few years ago.
Yep.
And in that case, a significant number of cases where people had not set their online, anybody who was set up online was probably okay.
Yep.
And it's all information that they already have anyway, so I'm not really sure what the concern about going ahead and doing that would be.
There isn't a lot to go ahead and set that up. I mean, if you've, if any of you have gone through and set that up through Social Security, I mean, it is pretty much having to do everything, including sending pictures of your goldfish in order to prove. Because the real dilemma with any of these things is that initial proof, is it really you? And you're trying to do that without being there. But they've gotten really good at that. So I would,
So is it better to do this?
I think it's better to have that because then.
And with your bank and with and like with Edward Jones, do you think we should have online stuff with all those people?
Well, so some of those don't have a. So the thing with Social Security is, and again, like I said, they've done a better job of fixing this, but all I needed to know was your Social Security number, which if it's released in a data breach, I got that. Need to know where you live and a few other pieces of information about you, which I can obtain.
Right.
And then I can set up that account, because everybody has Social Security. The banks and things like that, there's typically harder information information is harder to steal. Unless they broke into the bank, like your account information and so on. So, saying that you need a login on all your banks, I don't think you necessarily need to do that. But these publicly facing things like IPER, because that was again the same thing. People went in and all they needed was Social Security number, date of birth, address, etc., to set up an IPER to set up your IPER account. So it's when that public information is tied as your identifier. So,
Like I already have an account.
Number, but you can't get a new Social Security.
but
You can get a new MasterCard number.
yeah,
but
you can't get a new Social Security number. That's right. That unfortunately is with us. Yeah, and that was never meant to be a public identifier. But we won't go there.
In those kind of cases, wouldn't two-factor authentication be really important?
Yes, and we'll. It's coming up real soon, but yes. So the two-factor is how you lock the account that you've created. It's that initial setup of the account. That is that challenging part, and that's the loophole they took advantage of in IPER. The fact that they found people who didn't have an account, and all you needed to prove who you were to IPERs was Social Security number, date of birth, name. a couple things like that. When if they found that information about you and you didn't have an account, they could easily set one up pretending to be you and then access to all your money, so. And then they could set it up with two-factor authentication, et cetera. But yeah, that initial proof of identity is always a challenging thing on the internet when you're not there. Yeah.
A lot of my information is out on the dark web, and I have found that some places that have said that companies that you can pay, that they will take your information and they will go clear all your identity out of the dark web. But how do I know that they're legitimate?
Well, that, and I don't know how you know. The thing about the dark web is they can potentially clear some of what they knew was there at that moment in time. Now, what they tend to do is they tend to monitor to see when it pops up, but to say they can eliminate it all, the things at the backside of the dark web are owned by criminals trying to sell this stuff. So they're not cooperating with these agencies that are trying to, quote, clear it out of the dark web. So those services do a lot more about the fact of, is there something out there that is yours, and therefore, what are you going to do to minimize the effect of that being out there? So versus I'm going to scrub that off the dark web. It was already mentioned a little bit. Things to tell people. Credit lock is something that any one of the 3 credit bureaus can do for you. And that just prevents somebody from taking out a new credit card or opening up a new line of credit. You can easily unlock. And so that's something we tell people, if you're concerned about this, to go ahead and just put a credit lock on. Credit alerts, same thing. You can put those on free of charge. Monitoring your accounts, credit monitoring, that's when it costs money. Sometimes these places that have the data breach will offer that. They tend to not do that as much as I think they should. Not that I think that there ought to be laws for everything, but we need a little bit better protection of our consumers on some of these things when they lose that. Is your point? Whoever made the point that's right. We're being penalized for their mistake.
Well, so quickly, the monitor alerts, Experian Identity Works will do it for free, but there seems to be 2 Experians. Experian and Experian ID Works.
Experian is the real.
Is ID Works not real?
I've never heard of them, so I'm not sure who they are.
Experian ID Works?
Yeah, I've never. Experian is the, I'm going to point you to some resources. We're all done, and I'm pretty sure the library out there also has some resources too. But Federal Trade Commission has beautiful links on what to do when this happens, and they have links to the legitimate places you can go. So again, you go there, and then they will provide links to the exact locations, the exact people. But again, this is the one that we hear a lot about. Unfortunately, as is pointed out, we're being penalized for mistakes that others have made. And this 6 months notification for data breach is absolutely unacceptable by companies. That's just like, as I said, by that time, if it's going to be the dark web, it's long since been on the dark web. A little bit about wireless. Two things about wireless. One is home wireless, and the other is not home wireless. So home wireless, if you have it, you obviously need a password on it. Today, any of them you buy come with typically a password that is not even default anymore. It's written in type font so small that I'm sorry, but you need 3 magnifying glasses in it, but it's there. And again, that prevents unwanted access. But the other thing as part of this is that if you have guests or people coming in and using it, you can also think about setting up and enabling a guest. Many of these things have a guest and a not guest. They'll still have passwords on the guest. But the interesting thing about the guest is that gives your guests the right to use the internet, not to play with your Roomba. So it separates, puts your guests out on the internet and leaves them out of all the things you may have running around your house or cameras and so on. Not that your guests are gonna torment you, but that is one of the things that if you ever wonder why it's like, oh, I have a guest and a not guest. That's the difference, is the guest keeps them off of playing with all the things in your house. The mesh network, that's not really a security thing. People sometimes ask about the little hockey pucks you can get. Google and Amazon and others make these things that extend your wireless around your house. There's no security problems with those. They're kind of cute. They work. And so I mentioned that earlier. That's not something you should really worry about, putting those in place. Then we go wander around and try to use the internet from other places, hotels, airports, the free Wi-Fi. And a little bit depends on what you're going to do and your level of privacy concerns. If you're going to sit in a coffee shop and look through the web a little bit and not do anything more than that, no big deal. And if you go to a website that has a padlock, they can't see what you're doing. There's all this talk about VPNs. You see ads for VPNs. That is secure. It creates basically a pathway that nobody can see what you're doing. It's not something most of us, I think, need to really worry too much about. But people do use it as a service, so it's not. But for most of us, I think it's not really a big concern. Now, if you're doing business and a lot of things like that, sitting in a coffee shop, then yes, that might be a concern that you need to do. At Iowa State, we have VPN software on all of our devices, and on travel, if I'm interacting with Iowa State, I'll often engage the VPN. When you go to your favorite establishment and they got the Wi-Fi password written up there, well, everybody knows what it is, and all that does is really prevent others from seeing what you're doing on your computer. So it's a good thing. That's versus the ones that are just totally open. And if you're really concerned, and a lot of people who travel a lot, they'll use their cell phone as a hotspot if they're really concerned about something. Especially at airports, because airports are notoriously bad. But it really comes back to what you're using when you're connected to the internet. So not a lot of, we don't see a lot of attacks against this, but this is something that people kind of sometimes worry about, is this public Wi-Fi. So now back to what was, here's some general things, and then we're getting close to wrapping up and question time. So passwords, backups, and software updates. These, if you go to pretty much any government site, Google what are the top things you should do for security, these are going to be in the top 5 pretty much every time. So passwords. Passwords are the sort of the biggest problem. That's That's the key. That protects your data. And one of the things mentioned up here was this idea of multi-factor. And I agree with all, it is a pain. It is awful. It is icky. And it is the number one thing you can do to protect your account. As icky and awful as it is, it works. You go listen to DHS. Go out and give talks. There's a guy here in Iowa who goes around and gives talks like I do. We actually occasionally do talks together. This is his starting point. The number one thing you need to do is enable it if you can. And pretty much every bank, anything that's holding really critical information will demand this. And you all know how it works, right? You gotta have another thing. Your phone's your typical second factor. Email, text messages. It just depends on the system you set up and what's most convenient for you. What it means is if they get your password, they still have to have the other thing. Having a password alone doesn't get them anywhere. So that's the beauty of this multi-factor, even though I agree it's annoying. And then along with, so you still need good passwords. So you can't just go, okay, I'm gonna let MFA protect me. We talk about three characteristics of passwords. They need to be long and complex. Today I think the current suggestion is 12 characters passwords. I think it's what the government says. Every few years it gets longer and longer. And they need to be complex, right? Using your name, your first and last name happens to be 12 characters long, using that as your password, probably not a good idea. Every year they run a list of the top 25 passwords, bad passwords. It gets better every year. It used to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 was the top bad password. Now I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think they use 7 characters. Passwords in the top 10, right? Because it says enter your password. Well, password, right? Because that's what it's saying, enter password. And then secret, right? That's kind of obvious. You keep your passwords secret. And it is okay inside of some place you control to have them in a book. Nothing wrong with that. I wouldn't put them on an Excel spreadsheet on your laptop. That's probably not a really good idea. But a book in your house is, that's okay. Yeah.
Password managers are really powerful and easy to use. Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Did you have Same thing. All right. That's, very good. Yes. I love mine. They're all pretty much kind of the same. So these are the top 3 that I hear from people.
Can't they be hacked? The password keepers?
So, LastPass has had a couple issues, and they fixed them because that's been cloud-based. 1Password they tell you, they warn you, they can never get into your password file. If you lose your password key, you're SOL. Now, having said that, when you set this up, they give you a master unlock code, which is literally about 20 characters long, and they tell you to put that in your safe deposit box. That will always get you in. The other beauty of these things is in, trying to think of the word, not contingency. When everybody die, when people die and somebody has to take over. So having this in your safety deposit box, your children or whoever now has access to all your passwords and get into accounts. When my sister passed away, we did not have half of her passwords. They were written, I don't think they weren't all written down. And so having that sort of a system, if you have the book in your house, the password's written on, they get you the same sort of thing. These things are great because they work across platforms. So, I'm running around with 2 laptops, a desktop, and my phone. All 4 of this, I use 1Password. All 4 of them have 1Password. And if I need to log into something, they all have the passwords. The phone's really great. The phone will not open up the software you talk about breaking into it, will not open it up without my thumbprint. So in order for me to get at my passwords, I have to type in the password, the master unlock password, and give it my thumbprint in order to even get into my password file. So it's really, these are great. They remember them for you. They'll generate new ones. They'll auto-populate, right? It comes. You go to your bank, and you say, hey, and it knows, hey, you're at your bank. You want me to fill this in for you? And you click yeah, and it fills it in, and it types in your username and types in your password. You don't see your password because it shows up a bunch of dots, and you're in your bank. Then you got the multi-factor thing you got to do with your bank. But so these are by far this makes passwords manageable because you should have a separate password for every critical account you have, different password for everyone. And right past about, I'm at the point now we're past remembering 2 different things is difficult, let alone 200 plus accounts. Last couple things, backup, that's a boring thing. Backup. Don't leave it connected all the time. Keep it in a safe place, or cloud is a beautiful place to back things up to, because then it's somewhere else. So when the derecho, the floods, whatever other fun things that happen in Iowa come through, your stuff's up in the cloud somewhere, happy and safe, and your phones can do that too. All our phone pictures are in somewhere in some Google cloud. Which is kind of fun because I can go to my laptop and pull my pictures down. And then update. That's another one of those. You wake up on Wednesday morning, your computer's rebooted. You want to. Well, that's a good thing it did that because again, it's updating its software. Usually updates happen because there was some security thing they found. So when it says update, say yes. Don't say remind me later. Now you can put that off a little bit because sometimes you're in the middle of something and you go, no, not now. Although Zoom is really good at that. Zoom always wants to update the moment you fire up Zoom and you're 2 minutes late to your meeting. Oh yeah, we've all been there. Part of the whole thing here is this idea of making security accessible, and what I want to do is I'm going to close out by talking about something we're doing here at Iowa State, and we are producing a lot of materials for people to consume as far as cybersecurity in the form of Schoolhouse Rock. So these are short music videos. Monster Smash is all about updating your software. And every one of the ones we put on this website, there's a tip sheet that goes into more detail. Credit Lock Rock is one that was just released, and that has a tip sheet with the links to the 3 credit bureaus and the steps to take. And so this is our kind of fun thing we get to do. So again, cyberhouserock.info or a magic QR code. Again, we have lots of different videos up there. We're committed to, we have actually in the hopper enough videos to release 1 week for probably the next six months. Now the fun thing about this is, well, I'm very fortunate that my assistant is a singer. So if you hear a female voice on any of them, that's her, it's Lindsay. The lyrics for all of these songs, every one of these songs, was initially generated by ChatGPT. And I have done it enough and given it enough information that it pretty much will write a song first pass. Given a topic, I got to give it enough information about the topic and what I want out of it, but it pretty much gives me a song first pass. Doesn't take long for Lindsay to sing it. The longest part for us is to create the animations behind the song. There's all the images. And ChatGPT does not do, AI does not do cartoons. It is, man, they are just like, oh man, they're scary. So it's not there yet. So again, this is something
Doug?
yeah.
If we wanted access to those from you, or from your materials, how would we get to them? I don't know about Doug, okay.
Yep, right there. And so that takes me to the end. You know, if anyone would ask me 2 years ago if I'd be running a video production studio at Iowa State University, I said they're crazy. That's the logo and the name of our video production studio at Iowa State. And I am totally tone deaf, musically incompetent, but I can find people that can do these cool things.
Is that it? We have time for more questions, or?
Oh, yeah, I have time for questions, yeah. I wanted to make sure there's plenty of time for questions.
When I go on the website, often it'll come up and say something like, you'll accept cookies. Do you accept the cookies? And then just decline or accept some. What is that all about?
Okay, so there's two parts to that answer. First of all, cookies themselves are a way for the website that you went to remember basic things about you, so when you go back, it knows things about you. It doesn't know your login, but that's how when you go back to Amazon, for example, it knows who you are. That you're so-and-so, you still have to probably enter your username and password. This whole, every new website you're going to, asking the questions about cookies, that is something that is now about 3 years old. That is a result of a European Union law, GDPR, I can't remember what it stands for, but it's a privacy act. And so the European law says that you have the right to have an organization. First of all, you have the right to indicate whether or not an organization can get that type of data. So that's this yes, no on cookies. You also have the right at any point in time, if you've given a website stuff about you, you have the right to go back and tell them to remove all of that. All of it, including anything that's in the backups. So that's what this European law says. The United States, since Europe passed this thing, and they said, well, if you don't follow it, you can't, we won't let your websites in Europe. So we sort of all have to follow it. And that's actually a good thing. It is something that has brought this issue of privacy a little more on the forefront. But that's why it keeps asking you. I typically always say accept, because the cookies themselves are pretty harmless. It's just a way for them to remember who you are. If you're really worried about cookies and all those sorts of things, you can run incognito mode on any one of the browsers, which hides all that stuff from the website you're at. But it's the cookies aren't. Oh man.
We have a question over here.
Oh yes, sorry.
So when you go into the history and erase what you have searched, and that takes out the cookies, does it?
I don't think that takes, I think if you erase just your search history or your browsing history, I think the cookies may still live. I think you may have to go in and remove cookies at a separate step, but I may be wrong. I don't.
I think you can select.
You could say.
It tells you what you want to do.
To delete, yeah. Okay, so you delete the corresponding cookie? Yeah. Okay, I've never gone in and cleared out my browser history, so yes, I don't. I kind of like the fact the browser remembers where I've been, because I can just start typing in a few characters and autofills the rest of it, because I can't remember the website that I really wanted to go see. But
On Apple devices, do you recommend a third-party virus checker or something like that? Or are they pretty secure?
and I don't know, does Apple have a built-in one? Or not? Or do they always have third-party?
I think it's built into the system, you know, their updates and everything like that.
Yeah.
Because they have a lot of updates because of security issues.
I mean, I tell people when you talk about what virus scanner, I usually say the one that comes with a computer. Windows has a good one. Windows Defender is good. When you get the other ones, you're paying for some extra services that may be things you want to have. But I tell most people just run with what comes with Windows, what comes with Apple. It's they're as good as any of the rest. They all get the list of viruses from the same place. So they all get the same list of viruses. You're just paying for different functionality and whiz-bang things.
I think we're gonna wrap this up, Doug. It's all right? Folks, all this material will be recorded. It'll be on YouTube. It'll be on the League of Women Voters website. And it will also be played on KHOI sometime. We don't know when. So, thank you very much, Doug. That's great.